And good afternoon. I would like to call this meeting to order. Go ahead, Mr. Genius.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm only going to take 30 seconds of folks' time. I want to give a verbal notice of motion, and after I've given notice of motion, there'll be lots of time for people to see it and hear it and think about it, and hopefully it'll be discussed at a future meeting. The notice of motion is that the committee report to the House that, in its opinion, the government should, A, support the development of bystander awareness and intervention training in collaboration with other levels of government, academia, and civil society organizations as a key tool for combating sexual harassment and violence, hate crimes, and other forms of criminal activity. B, support the provision of bystander awareness and intervention training to federal workers. And C, encourage all Canadians to avail themselves of opportunities to take bystander awareness and intervention training. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I know it's just verbal, so it's very important that we can get that in writing as well to ensure that Adrienne LaRoche will have that. We will make sure there is a French version that will be coming around and circulated for you. I will ask for the clerk to make sure that you get that motion so that everybody has it in writing. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garnett. You're out. Fantastic. Okay, so anyway, welcome to number 34 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Pursuant to the Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February 1st, the committee will resume its study of the mental health of young women and girls. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23rd, 2022. Members are attending in person and in the room remotely using the Zoom application. And you'll see online we do have some of our members on here today, as well as some of our witnesses here. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize your name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation on the Zoom app, you will find it in the bottom of the screen, and it says floor, English, or French, and choose the one that works best for you. For everybody in the room, these little handy dandy earpieces, you go onto your piece right here. You can choose your language, French, English, or on the floor, and there's the volume control there for as well, so that's there for us. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand functions. The clerk and I will manage the speaking list as best as we can. Before we welcome our witnesses, I would like to provide this trigger warning. This will be a difficult study. We'll be discussing experiences related to mental health. This may be triggering to our viewers, members, or staff with similar experiences. If you're feeling distressed or need help, please advise our clerk. I would like to now welcome all of our witnesses today. Here we have, as I said, we have some here in front of us as well on Zoom. From the Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity, I'd like to welcome Debbie Owusu Akia, and Debbie, you can fix that for him if you don't mind, because I will get it proper soon. And she is our executive director. And we also have Jamie Sandgrove, manager communications and advocacy. From the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, we have Brittany McMillan, who is the executive director. Yes, go ahead, Adrienne. Sorry.
Madame la Présidente.
Yes, Madam Chair. Did we do the sound tests with the witnesses to make sure that we can hear them okay? Yes, we did do our tests.
You're checked. Excellent. Excellent. Fantastic. And continuing with I saw it, thanks. So Brittany's got her hand up as the executive director, and beside her is Jordan, who is McLaren, manager, client services, and human trafficking response team. La Maison Hébergement, RSSM, Veronique Couture, who is the executive director. Welcome, Veronique. And from the Merit Center online, we have Stuart Shanker, distinguished research professor emeritus, philosophy and psychology from York University. And we also have women of the Métis Nation, Les Femmes, Mishif, Ati Siwak, Melanie Orminiho. So Melanie, you're going to have to help me out with that too. I hate, just like Leah, I hate when I don't get people's names right. You just feel so terrible, so I do apologize. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to be providing each organization five minutes for their opening statements. If there's two of that organization, that is combined within that 5 minutes. So I'm going to pass it over first to Debbie and Jamie at the Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity. Your 5 minutes starts.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us today. My name is Debbie Usuacha. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director of the CCGSD. Our organization is a national youth-focused 2S LGBTQ organization headquartered here in Ottawa, and we promote gender and sexual diversity in all of its forms through the services of education and advocacy. Our vision is a world without discrimination, especially for 2S LGBTQ youth, and to create a world where the human rights of 2S LGBTQ people would truly be respected. By recognizing the complexity of lives and experiences, our resources and our programming serve to empower marginalized queer, trans, and Indigenous youth, as well as provide the wider public with tools for building allyship with 2S LGBTQ+ communities. As a leader in anti-oppression work, our goal is to promote healthy relationships, respect, and dignity within and towards the 2S LGBTQ+ community. We specifically recognize that youth in our community have become disproportionately affected by bullying, violence, and hate crimes in comparison to their cis heterosexual peers. We also recognize the effects racism, colonialism have on queer, Black, Indigenous people of color. Our organization works specifically with queer and trans youth in urban as well as rural areas across Canada between the ages of 12 to 29. We mostly work within the middle school and high school contexts, and as well with young people who are marginalized due to many other forms of their identity. From our evaluation work, we can safely say that a lot of the folks that we work with also reflect a variety of different ages, gender identities, sexualities, abilities, race, and ethnicities. I think what's key to mention is that about 60% of our participants happen to self-identify as female or as women or girls. And approximately 25% of the folks that we work with are also racialized, Black, or Indigenous. We also work with folks who, around 5 to 10% of our clients who identify as trans or have trans lived experience. As well, we have about a fifth of the folks we work with who note that they are living with a disability of some sorts. I mention all of this just to say that our work inherently addresses mental health of diverse 2S LGBTQ young people, including young women and girls. And it's important for us to look at the nuances of the experiences of young women and girls from the perspective of gender and sexual diversity. So what we do know, and there was recently a study that was launched by Statistics Canada on the bullying and victimization among young sexual and gender diverse people in Canada. What it shows is that there's high levels of bullying against sexually and gender diverse youth in Canada that is having adverse effects on their mental health. These youth who are more likely to be bullied are also reporting high levels of suicidal ideation. They have a desire to skip school as a result. And the levels of bullying that they're being dealt with they're a wide range. This can be including being made fun of, name calling, cyberbullying, which of course speaks to the online hate that LGBTQ people experience, be excluded from events, and rumors. We know that barriers and discrimination that's rooted in misogyny is only further compounded by that intersection of homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia. And it's also important to note that bullying tactics that we see amongst young people, it's highly gendered. I want to note the report from our colleagues at EGAL Canada, the Still in Every Class in Every School, where they look specifically at the context within school communities. Of the youth that were studied in their report, 11% of the cisgender and heterosexual respondents reported languishing mental health, compared to 20% of those who are gay boys, bisexual boys, or queer boys, versus the 25% of lesbian, gay, bisexual girls, and then 40% of trans respondents. Conversely, cisgender, lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer girls are more likely to experience some form of personal victimization through social media in comparison to their cisgender, gay, bisexual, and queer boy counterparts. And this is happening, of course, online, in washrooms, change rooms, hallways. It's impacting their desire to participate in physical education, etc. And so what's clear that I wanted to conclude before we go to questions is that there's a need for disaggregated data for this study. We want to look at the specific impacts on the mental health challenges of young queer, trans girls, and trans feminine people, and that there is a strong desire for Canadian context, especially with the increased amount of information coming from the States. We need to look at diversifying the data that speaks to transgender experiences to speak to trans girls and trans feminine folks. And lastly, really focusing on that knowledge mobilization piece so that educators and other adults know how best to address the needs of young queer and trans girls.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm now going to pass the floor over to the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, to Brittany and Jordan. Go ahead, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much for inviting us today. My name is Brittany McMillan. I'm the Executive Director at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Centre, which is one of the many sexual assault centres in Ontario, and our core funding comes from the provincial government through the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, also known as MCCSS. We're a small agency who receives just under $320,000 per year as our core funding model. Jordan is with me to help support any questions that may be more clinical or client-specific. She is the manager of client services and also leads our human trafficking response team. Today I will highlight the significant impact that sexual violence has on the mental health of women and girls. I will also discuss the need to mitigate such long-term mental health concerns for survivors and the need for more prevention and education in the field of sexual violence. Women who have been sexually assaulted are more than twice as likely as male victims to develop post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, with PTSD symptoms lasting up to 4 times longer than males. According to the DSM-5, some of the highest rates of PTSD are found among survivors of rape, with rates ranging from 1/3 to more than 1/2 of rape survivors. PTSD is commonly associated with other mental health conditions and is not the only mental health disorder that may develop after a sexual assault. Survivors may also develop conditions including complex post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, eating disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorders, substance use disorders. The risk for these related conditions may be greater for individuals who experienced a sexual assault at a younger age. Girls who are sexually abused in childhood are at an increased risk of being sexually assaulted as adolescents and adults, which further increases the risk of developing mental health disorders. I want to note here that, unfortunately, we aren't funded to support people under the age of 16, leaving a huge gap in our services for young girls. In 2021, approximately 19.24 million women were living in Canada. Across their lifetime, it is estimated that 1 in 3 women and girls will experience sexual violence at least once in their lifetime. We believe these statistics do not reflect the reality because of low reporting. This means that at least 6.41 million women and girls in Canada will experience sexual violence. It's also important to note that our catchment area, the population in our catchment area, is about 320,000 people. It is not just the numbers that are increasing. Many professionals in our field are anecdotally reporting that the intensity of sexual assaults is increasing, including an increase in physical injuries and strangulations. At the same time, it is important that we are clear that these numbers are not just due to the pandemic. The rates of sexual violence against women and girls have long been staggering. Our recommended action plan is if women who are believed, not blamed, and offered support and treatment after a sexual assault are less likely to develop long-term mental health impacts. Therapy, support groups, and self-help strategies can help survivors cope with and heal from PTSD and other mental health symptoms. The sexual assault centres across the province of Ontario and surely throughout Canada are very much underfunded. If more core funding was invested into these agencies, survivors of sexual violence would get better access to supports in a timely manner, which would prevent many instances of long-term mental health. Prevention and education also needs to be a priority. In Ontario, many sexual assault centres have taken this role on with minimal funding, as we know the impact is so valuable. If we can get to the young boys and teach them the core foundations around the issues surrounding sexual violence, consent, toxic masculinity, and the patriarchy, we will see the rates of sexual violence go down. We are currently prioritizing this training to hockey associations in order for Canada's sport to be a safer space for everyone. And we also need to prioritize male allyship programming. So in conclusion, I've lost my last note, so that's fun. But in conclusion, I just want to say we're change makers, right? We get into this field because we want to make changes, and the unfortunate reality is we can't do that with as best we can with the limited funding that we currently receive as core funding model.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it online, and actually, Veronique is right here. I'm going to pass it to Veronique Couture from the La Maison Hébergement, RSSM. 5 minutes for you, Veronique.
Bonjour, mon nom est Véronique.
Hello, my name is Véronique Couture, and I'm the executive director of a community organization, a transitional living center in Quebec. So we offer a community living center for those who are coming from the hospital, from prison, amongst other places. Our organization has men and women, but we mainly work with women. Our needs have drastically increased with the pandemic. And there was a lack of service for these last 2.5 years. The real problem is the lack of funding. Sorry. It's our biggest problem. We are not getting the money we need, and we're not getting it on a regular basis. And we also are lacking workforce. The most significant problem is this funding. We are funded by the PESA in Quebec. But of course, we need money coming from other areas in order to make sure that we are able to go further in the services that we offer. It's very complicated to do these application processes for grants. Oftentimes, we find ourselves with not enough funding, and then our workers are not able to do their work because there are too many other things to do. They're filling in request applications. And so we want to make sure that we're getting money more quickly. I came here today with, how could I say this? With, the feeling that I wasn't as prepared maybe as other people who are with me, but what I want to say is that the need is there. Women and girls need mental health support, and they need it quickly. They need it in all aspects. For us, we have people, 70% of them talk about sexual assault, have experienced sexual assault in their childhood. And so we need to support them in finding this new ability to support themselves. We need to learn how to support young girls and women in Canada and guide them to the right place at the right time. I think that's essentially what I wanted to say. This is a very important topic for me. We do need more funding in order to help women and girls. And then on a more personal note, I personally live day to day, with one of my daughters, and I face some of these problems, and the support isn't there. So my oldest daughter, I do live with her, and I can say that there isn't enough services being offered because there isn't enough funding, and there's a lack of understanding and awareness amongst young people, especially in the school system. And that's it.
You're going to find out we're all hearing that same thing. There's just not enough. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to turn it now online to Stuart Shanker. Stuart, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I can't help but feel that you must all be feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the absolute frightening scope of the problems that we're facing with mental health of women and young girls today. And I've been given the job of telling you in 5 minutes about an incredible neuroscientific revolution that we're going through. Really all I'm going to try to do is spark some curiosity because with this new understanding, it's giving us tools that we can really reinforce all of the messages that I've just heard and that you've heard from your other witnesses. So essentially what we have learned, especially within the last 3 years, is that I'm just going to talk about anxiety now. The numbers that we're seeing are very difficult for us to tabulate. We know that it's far in excess of the 20% reported before the pandemic. We know that anxiety is a warning system, and it serves as a warning that the brain has detected an external threat. And that's not hard to figure out. We can certainly enumerate the threats that women are dealing with today. You just heard some very good examples. It also serves as a warning system for internal threats, and that's what I'm going to talk about. An internal threat is something that's coming from very deep in the brain. It is coming from systems that lie beneath the threshold of awareness. And essentially what's happening is that these systems are on what's called homeostatic imbalance. Homeostatic imbalance produces things like depression, anxiety disorder, self-harm, and so on. There are 3 primary causes of these homeostatic imbalances. The first one is simply excessive stress. Stress is a complicated issue, and I'll come back to it in 1 second, what we mean by stress, what a scientist means. The second cause, and this is the big one during the pandemic, are maladaptive modes of dealing with that stress. And essentially, a maladaptive mode is something that gives you relief in the moment, but exacerbates the stress problem. The third cause is a lack of experiences that produce oxytocin. Oxytocin turns off the stress response. So what we see in all of the cases that you guys are hearing about are women and girls, young women and girls that are in a state of being overstressed and something called hypodopaminergic. So what does that mean? A stress is anything that requires the brain to burn energy to deal with that stress. And it could be physical stress. It could be noise. It could be crowds. It could be too much light or not enough. It could be emotional stress. It could be cognitive stress. And these are things that we talk about and explain. The problem with excessive stress, such as we have seen over the course of the pandemic, is it turns off dopamine. And we need dopamine. These women need dopamine. Without it, when your dopamine levels are reduced, it causes withdrawal, something called anhedonia. It causes that lack of motivation. You can't go to school. It causes anxiety, chronic anxiety. It causes depression, dysthymia. So the question that this raises for us is, given the unbelievable stresses that women and girls are under, what can we do to alleviate this? What can we do to put the brain in a state where it can benefit from the programs that you are hearing about? And what we need is something that turns off the stress response. The problem that we have here, and I'll just explain this really fast because I can't keep track of 5 minutes. The problem that you have is when there's a stressor, so there's chemicals that go up to produce the energy to meet the stress. And there's another set of chemicals that turn off the stress, that get us back into balance. What we're seeing in anyone that's suffering from, let's say, from anxiety disorder is this: the two systems are out of whack. So what we got to figure out is how do we get them back into balance? And we don't do it we can't do it by education. We can't do it.
Dr.
Sorry, I'm
Shanker,
hearing myself.
you're going to
Yeah.
start hearing yourself because I'm going to say we're quite a few seconds over the 5 minutes. And I know there's a lot more in that brain that we need to get out of there. But I'm going to have to turn over to the next witness, and then we'll be sure to get back to you for questions. So thank you so much, Dr. Shanker. I'm now going to turn it over to our final panelist on today. We have Melanie from the Women of the Métis Nation. Melanie, 5 minutes.
Opportunity for Lefemi Chipotipimsoak to speak to the committee today on the experiences of mental health for Métis women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender diverse people. I'm speaking to you from the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people here in Ottawa, but I actually live in the Treaty 6 territory and the mother of the Métis land in Edmonton, Alberta. Lefemi Chipotipimsoak works to ensure that Métis women from across the motherland are safe, connected, empowered, and have the capacity to create the conditions for healthy and vibrant communities throughout the Métis Nation. Métis women are the heart of the Métis Nation, and we envision a world where they are able to live in safety and free from violence, enjoying the same standards of safety, security, justice, health, and wellness afforded to others. Compared to non-Indigenous people in Canada, Indigenous people experience mental health at rates, disproportionate rates, often with greater severity of symptoms. And Indigenous people, including survivors of residential school systems and their descendants, experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, substance abuse, and behaviors related to suicide. Yesterday, we were reviewing some pre-COVID statistics in 2018 with our Métis Nation of British Columbia governing committee on the state of mental health in Métis youth in British Columbia. In the study, 47% of female Métis youth reported that they are experiencing anxiety. And this is all pre-COVID. 35% of Métis youth are reporting experiencing depression, and 31% of female Métis youth report serious consideration of suicide. These statistics are alarming, and given the impact of the pandemic on mental health, we anticipate the same mental health for Métis youth has even increased and been further exacerbated. We know that long-term COVID research is being done as to mental health on our people, and many of our people have suffered from COVID. Especially in the context of MMIWG, Métis women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender diverse people have experienced severe forms of abuse, trauma, and personal violence. In calls to action number 19 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it was called upon the government to close the gap in health outcomes between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal communities, including suicide, mental health, and addiction. The National Inquiry into the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls also found a need for increased funding and support for holistic services and programming in areas including trauma, addictions, treatment, and mental health services. It's important to note that for many Indigenous people, mental and emotional well-being are also tied to social, cultural, spiritual, environmental, and political well-being. Health is a holistic concept. It encompasses the well-being of ourselves, our families, our communities, and our nation. In this way, the mental health of our women, girls, and gender diverse people is intimately interwoven and connected to the well-being of our families and our communities. For Métis communities, the social determinants of health are not just social, they are political and historical. They are structural determinants of health. The impacts of colonialism, such as the intergenerational trauma of residential schools, 60 scoops, and other issues, have ripped people from their culture and the culture that presents our path to healing. In working with Métis survivors of trauma, violence, abuse, and neglect, we know that connection to culture and community strengthen opportunities for healing. Working with elders, spending time on the land, harvesting medicines, weaving, beading are all activities where culture itself becomes mental health care. Understanding the importance of culture and identity, it is a necessary step in decolonizing mental health care. Beyond a pan-Indigenous approach, incorporating Métis values such as kinship ties, faith, spirituality, storytelling, and traditional knowledge in trauma-informed care is needed to truly support healing in our communities. To this end, LFMO has developed Weaving Miskatoha with 62 calls to Miskatoha, which means change in our language. In this report, we identified the need for Métis Nation Healing and Wellness Resource Foundation to provide immediate and long-term supports to women survivors and families, as well as the need for system navigators to work with Métis women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA people.
Perfect.
And their families. And,
Melanie, I'm just
Sorry.
going to have to cut you off. We've once again gone a little bit over, but we'll make sure that we have lots of questions so that we can get to those as well. What we're going to be doing now is starting our first round of questionings. Each group gets 6 minutes. I'm going to start off with Michelle Frary. Michelle, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is going to be maybe one of the greatest tests I've ever had, because I'm going to try and interview Dr. Stuart Shanker, who I am so excited, and we have hours and hours to squeeze into 6 minutes. So, Dr. Shanker, I believe we can do this. Dr. Shanker has personally transformed my life and my children's life, and I can tell you with certainty that this man knows exactly what we need to do on a child mental health level as well as an adult mental health level. And his research is proven and it works, but it is not a quick fix. Nothing is. So, Dr. Shanker, I truly believe that if we want to help our children, we have to help the people who deal with our children. Otherwise, we will just keep passing over our own stress, much of what you were talking about in your testimony. One of the things you speak of is calm begets calm. If the people who are supposed to care for our children, and this study that we are looking at, particularly in FEWO, is about factors contributing to the mental health of our youth and young girls, and how do we help that and how do we support that? So if calm begets calm, if the people who are supposed to be the calm are not calm and don't have the tools to learn, what impact will that have on our children, and how do we get them to be calm?
There are two really important points in what Michelle's just said. The first one is that we do know from the studies we've done that anyone who's working with children, teens, and young adults today is extremely stressed. And what we have found at all of the institutes that we run is we have to start off the first day dealing with their mental health needs. And particularly, we work on something called self-regulation. Michelle's second question is, why is that so important? And the reason is, one of the recent discoveries in neuroscience is we have a brain-to-brain connection with kids. It's a wireless connection. It goes from our limbic system to their limbic system. What the child hears is what our limbic system is feeling. If I am irritated, if I am anxious, angry, hyper-aroused, that message is communicated to the kid. If I am calm, if I am myself regulated, that message is communicated to the kid. So it's called the interbrain, and it is truly a game changer in our understanding of why it doesn't matter so much what we say, what words we use. It's the messages that our brain is sending, and it sends these through eye gaze, through tone of voice, and so on. Is that a good enough answer, Michelle?
Oh, it is, and I know I've watched it work, and I understand, and it changed my life. As I said, we have $4.5 billion dedicated right now under the Minister of Mental Health that is supposed to be allocated to mental health. Dr. Shanker, you have the framework, the research, the data in place of self-regulation to teach inside schools, to teach to teachers, to teach to coaches, to teach with everyone who is dealing with our children, including all of our witnesses, to teach these frontline workers how to self-regulate. Would that $4.5 billion, if some of it was allocated to you for a framework that we need for mental health strategy to help our people cope with mental health wellness, would you be able to implement it?
Again, it's a great question, because what Michelle is pointing to is the fact that our numbers are so overwhelming that we need to be thinking in terms of a universal approach. And that's why she's itemized things like schools or any organization or parenting groups. What we have to do is develop methods that empower the child or empower the teen, methods for recognizing when they're overstressed, how to reduce that stress, how they can turn off that disparity I was talking about, the stress response, how they can experience calm, which is a forgotten thing these days, and finally how they can restore. Can it be done? Yes, we've seen it can be done. Can you turn around a child's trajectory? You can change every single kid's trajectory. But to do it, it's a step-by-step process, and they have to get back into homeostasis. They have to get back into that balanced brain state. And yes, we can teach this through our public resources. In fact, that's what we're doing right now, and it works.
It certainly does, and I think frontline workers need your self-regulation as much as our children do, because if we both don't have it, it's not going to work. I just would love you to touch on, I know you didn't get a chance in your testimony to say what you need to do. I think we have about 40 seconds left. Dr. Shanker, I'm going to give you the floor if you want to take it.
If I was going to give you one single message, it would be this. I've done this now my entire adult life. I've seen thousands and thousands of kids. I have never seen a bad kid. There isn't such a thing, okay? So if a kid is overstressed, it's a warning sign for us. This kid needs help, and we have to give it, and that's why you guys have met together in this committee.
I couldn't agree more. There is no such thing as a bad child. Why do we see the behavior, and why now? Words from my very good friend, Dr. Stuart Shanker. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're now going to pass it over, and Emanuela is actually online. Emanuela, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for the incredible testimony that they're providing us with today. Dr. Shanker, I will get back to you because I have a very strong interest in psychology, so I would like to hear more. But before I get to you, I would like to ask some of our other witnesses a couple of questions on the work that they're doing and
Emanuela?
expand a little bit.
Emanuela, it's Karen. I'm going to just say I've messed up. I just wanted everybody to know that both Jamie and Debbie must leave at the 1 hour time. So if there are questions, I'm going to give your time back, Emanuela. If there are questions, let's also make sure we get them in this hour. I'm so sorry that slipped my mind. There you go. Go ahead, Emanuela.
All right, thank you. So my first question will go to Debbie. You did mention that the biggest issue right now, of course, gender and people who have a different sexual gender identity do experience mental health at a much higher impact. They have other experiences of mental health, and I was wondering if you can kind of give us, I guess, a day in the life of somebody who works in your shoes. What is it exactly that differs in their experiences? Of course, bullying plays a really big role, as you mentioned. Can you tell us how desperate the need is for us to really take a look at the differences and to fund them appropriately?
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you. In terms of like a day of the life, and of course, I'm contextualizing it for young LGBTQ girls, considering that's the main cohort that we work with. You know, for young people to deal with the everyday stressors of their lives for those who are at a critical period of their development where they're developing a sense of self and they're figuring out who they are in terms of their attraction or their gender expression. We know that we still live in a society where homophobia and transphobia exist, and that it's still taught in institutions, including within the education field. Despite the efforts to center human rights, a lot of that stigma still exists within our communities. And so what ends up happening, whether it's peer-to-peer, young people weaponize that against their colleagues. And a lot of shame still exists for young people despite seeing other, and I'll use Jamie and I as examples, adults who are not that much older than they are, who are proud of who we are and our identities. There's still a lot of pushback, and that pushback is driving a lot of issues for these young folks. Aside from the peer-to-peer model side, I do think it's important to note that, and I think Dr. Shenker is mentioning this, adults play a key role. And sometimes adults are the bullies who are driving these mental health stressors for young folks, whether it's parents who are not affirming, whether it's not seeing yourself reflected in course curricula, or whether it's coordinated approaches and rhetoric to ensure that young trans folks are excluded from doing other things that their peers are doing. And so these things still exist. It's cultural. The work that we do is long-term cultural change, trying to center and normalize the diversity that exists in our communities. And I think what's critical about the work that we do is that not only do folks get to, again, see possibility models, but they also get to hear their experiences be centered. And it's not just our work. LGBTQ organizations across the country are doing this. By virtue of existing, they are providing mental health supports and wellness supports in combating the isolation that those young kids might experience in school by giving them a safe haven outside of a school context. And so funding, and I will stress that LGBTQ organizations are super underfunded, and we've seen some really exciting commitments recently, but it's not enough, and we need to see this stuff core and last long. Our work is super crucial for giving young people a sense of belonging to ensure that those challenges that they're dealing with are being met. Jamie, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. The one thing I would add, talking about, because Debbie mentioned that adults play a role and are sometimes the bullies, I think something that's important to note is the role that service providers play. So the work we do, we provide community-focused services, but our staff aren't clinical, and that's the case at most 2S LGBTQ+ services. And we know from the survey included in the LGBTQ2, or the 2S LGBTQI+ action plan that was published at the end of the summer, that less than 20% of mental health care providers are providing services that are 2S LGBTQI+ specific. So for queer and trans youth, if you're going to get mental health care and the service provider who's supposed to be giving you that care doesn't understand your lived experience or your identity, it's an additional hurdle where you're having to educate this person who's supposed to be giving you care, which, especially if you're a youth who carries compounding identities, maybe you're from a racialized community or you're Black or Indigenous, that's a real challenge and a real barrier to accessing mental health care.
Thank you. And I guess, Jamie, you just helped us lead to my next question, because I know that Debbie also mentioned knowledge mobilization so that adults know how to respond to our youth. Do you have any recommendations as to how we can make that knowledge mobilization happen? What are some of the ways that we can educate educators, I guess, so that they're better aware of certain issues when they're dealing with kids from so many different backgrounds in every sense of the word?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we actually have a program that started earlier this year called Not Just the Tip that's funded by Health Canada and is a pilot project for a train the trainer model for comprehensive sex education, essentially where our staff are going to go to cities in Canada and train sexual health educators in how to provide queer and trans inclusive sexual health education. And I think a model like that could be really, really effective in terms of educating, whether it's healthcare providers, whether it's teachers, educating them on how to provide compassionate and informed services to queer and trans youth, because it's something that's scalable as well. If you're, rather than having to have staff all over the country, having people who can go and train trainers who can then provide those services and kind of pay it forward, I think is something that would be scalable in a really meaningful way.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're now going to pass the floor over to Adrienne. Adrienne, 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses today. It's very interesting to talk about these intersectional identity factors, the question of violence, the question of all these different topics that you spoke of. It's really interesting to hear about how this relates to mental health. So first, I'd like to speak with Véronique Couture. You are really speaking from your heart in terms of what you need. You are a mother and you work in a housing organization. And many witnesses during this study have shared with us how important it is to have access to a stable form of funding, especially local organizations that work on the front line, on the ground, helping those who are affected by different mental health problems. So I'm going to go right to my question. I think we can get back into the details of this later, but I want you to know that the increase in federal health transfers to the provinces and territories, as was unanimously requested, could be one of the solutions. Like you said, the problem is a question of financial means. Yes, absolutely. That being said, we need reoccurring transfers of funding. Yes, we need the money quickly, but again, this needs to be something that's happening regularly. Now, it's interesting because when we speak of health transfers, it's something that happens over several years. The government commits to this predictable funding, and it also needs to be meaningful funding. As you mentioned in your opening statement, I'm going to keep talking about funding now because I think it's important, because you spoke of this reoccurring stable funding. The federal government is interfering more and more in Quebec's jurisdiction. And oftentimes, they're not doing things that local organizations are asking for. And so this reoccurring funding needs to be happening through provincial governments. They are usually, have a better idea of what's happening on the ground. I also want to talk about the overlap that can happen when we're not giving the money to the provinces such as Quebec, who can then distribute it to organizations like yours. Yes, I think that money needs to be redistributed throughout Quebec, and I think it needs to be simplified. Sorry, I'm hearing a lot of noise. It needs to be simple and easy to access. We shouldn't have to hire someone or make sure that someone is handling only this aspect of things because it's so complicated. We want that to be a part of the overall mission of an organization. Because you've said that you're working on the ground and you have been doing so for years. So you're well aware of the fact that in Quebec there are programs that are offered. They already exist, and the government of Quebec is waiting to get funding for several projects. So when we talk about putting conditions on these health transfers, the experts, you're working with the departments, right? Yes, that's it. So specialized organizations like yours are waiting for funding. Yes, right now we're working with a program that goes back to 2015, and we're not getting the funding. So funding is just not increasing enough. You also spoke of the complexity of things, of how bureaucratic it is. When we talk about another level of government who wants to add different conditions and standards, yes, it's double the amount of work to receive the same thing in the end. What we want is to be able to work once, to receive the money that we need, to essentially just simplify everything, because then for each project, it requires so much work for a one-time payment, and then we have to do it over and over again. So on the ground, it looks like you're seeing an increase in mental health problems. Yes, it's become worse and worse. I have a waiting list of 38 people right now, and I can't help them because I simply don't have the workers to do so. I don't have the rooms for them, and I don't have the financial means either. I don't have the means to hire more people. So those who work for us are doing a lot for a small group of people. And do you think the pandemic made this work? Yeah, worse, rather. Yes, it did. We've never had a waiting list. This has only been the case for about a year and a half. And the waiting list continues to get longer. There are individuals who are living on the streets who have made it to jail, and we see this often.
Be sure to get back to Adrian. I'm now going to turn it back online to Leah. Leah, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the witnesses. And I'm joining you from unceded Algonquin territory, but from home today, which is new. My first question was for Debbie or Jamie. I wanted to ask you about the mental health of a particular segment of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, in particular the trans community. Like, we know that trans youth face a much higher risk and rates of mental crises than other youth. For example, from the Ontario chapter of the Canadian Mental Health Association, we know that LGBTQ youth face 14 times the risk of suicide, as you indicated, suicide rates before, and substance abuse than heterosexual peers. And that from an Ontario-based study, that 77% of trans youth that responded to that study had seriously considered suicide, and 45% had attempted suicide. It also found that trans youth and those who had experienced physical or sexual assault were found to be at the greatest risk. I mean, to share that these statistics are not alarming or upsetting is a complete understatement, and clearly is indicative of a failure to respond to people of diverse identities and experiences. And I think it also demonstrates that we are not properly supporting 2S LGBTQIA plus youth, people, in particular trans and gender diverse youth. Can you expand on what we need to do more to support queer and trans young people? I know you spoke about disaggregated data. I certainly agree with you, but just on the ground, like, you know, if we could turn the key tomorrow, what would some of those supports look like?
Start, and then I'll pass it to Debbie. I think the disaggregated data that you mentioned is one of the most important things. We just don't have information on a federal level about where the need is for trans and gender diverse communities. So, for example, the 2019 Health Standing Committee report on LGBTQIA2 health has data specifically on the experiences of LGBT people, but there's no axes of analysis about how that breaks out when you compare it to gender identity. And while you're right, Ms. Gazin, that research has been done on provincial levels, we haven't had that data on a federal level yet. I think the training for service providers is another big piece, and building on what some of the other witnesses have said, I think funding is a really big part of it. Most of the organizations across the country that provide services to LGBTQIA plus people are funded on project basis, and so there's no ability to grow that kind of core capacity. And I think when you're thinking about marginalized communities, the clinical support is a really important aspect, but the other piece is that being able to connect with people who share your experience. And so when you think about pride centers or queer and trans community centers, they're really providing life-saving support. And I think especially in rural areas or more remote areas or provinces that don't have big cities that have like municipally funded Pride centers, that funding is a really core need.
So I'm going to move on to a next question just because I have a limited amount of time, and I'll ask this one to Debbie because I know that you're leaving in the next hour. We know that LGBTQ rates of becoming unsheltered or homelessness are much higher. I know that the government isn't doing enough to address this, especially the many youth who are often kicked out of their houses or abandoned by family after coming out. To your knowledge, what kinds of supports do you know of that are currently effective? And my second part, it just brings up some statistics. For example, according to Stats Canada, prior to the pandemic, LGBTQ2 plus Canadians were 27 times more or were twice as likely as their non-LGBTQ2 plus counterparts, 13%, to have experienced some kind of homelessness or housing insecurity in their lifetime. So we know this is a crisis. I know it's a crisis certainly for many young people in my riding. What programs available right now that you know of are effective? And how are programs that are currently available not meeting the needs? And I'll give that to Debbie.
Excellent. Great question. I think it's twofold. I think there's the existing shelter services that have a long way to go in being affirming of LGBTQ people. That is a huge gap that we're continuing to see. I have history working within the women's shelter sector myself and know that there are still some ongoing challenges of building capacity to ensure that those spaces are safe for not only queer people, but I would say transgender folks in particular. I have more research on this and actually a study I helped contribute on that I'd gladly share later on so folks can access that. So I think there's definitely that support work. And I actually think the LGBTQ sector and the shelter sector can be doing a lot of work together to address that. And then secondly, I would say family violence prevention. There's a lot of work that needs to happen with working with parents and caregivers around preventative work to support their young people so that these young folks are not ending up on the street. And so more work on that would be really, really crucial in funding that as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're now going to start into our second round. It's 5 minutes for the Conservatives and Liberals, 2.5 minutes for the Bloc and NDP. I'm going to turn it over the first 5 minutes to Dominique Vien. Dominique?
5 minutes, Madame la Présidente.
5 minutes, Madam Chair. Thank you. So thank you to both of you for coming here, for all of you rather, for coming here today. I'd like to go directly to questions. Dr. Shanker, I'd like to hear you speak about, because what we're also speaking of are factors that contribute to the vulnerability of young women's mental health. What would you like to tell us about factors that could be quickly identified this afternoon?
Forgive me for answering in English. I couldn't find my translation button. Both Debbie and Jamie have identified something very important. So we know the data tells us that these Pride centers have this beneficial effect. And so for neuroscientists, we're always asking why. And here, the why is that it's something I was hinting at before when I was talking to Michelle. What we need to do is we need to turn off the stress response. The brain, the human brain, can't really do it on its own. It gets turned off. We are wired for social engagement. It gets turned off by human contact. That's our primary. And one of the reasons why we've seen this universal rise during the pandemic is that teens and young women have been deprived of what their brain needs, which is social contact, which is that intimacy, which turns off the stress response. The problem is compounded by the fact that in the present culture, they are searching for what are effect. It's called dopamine hooks. They look for, you can get a shot of dopamine from social media. And what that does is it keeps you going, but it does nothing to turn off the stress response. On the contrary, for the reasons that were explained to you first thing today, they are exposed to messages which greatly exacerbate their stress load. The last point I wanted to make is this.
Oh, j'ai tellement...
Thank you. I don't have very much time, Doctor. Thank you very much for your answers. I'd like to hear you speak about a social event that we're aware of over the last 5 years. That's the Me Too movement. I'd like to know what you think about it. Are you under the impression that the fact that women are more free now, it could be the case for men as well, that this has had a positive effect on mental health amongst women and girls in general?
The problem that they have is that in isolation, they cannot reduce their stress. And here's a very interesting phenomenon. When stress is very high, it shuts down our self-awareness. It shuts down our feelings. So now we have the compound problem that they're feeling anxious, but don't even know it until the problem bursts. So what we have to do in order to address what you're discussing, in order to empower them, they have to learn how to recognize when they are or are becoming overstressed, what they can do to reduce that stress load, which will trigger oxytocin, not dopamine. And then what we see in all of these, all of the problems.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I'm going to ask the Me Too movement question to Brittany. Have you noticed that the Me Too movement has had a positive effect on women's mental health?
Sorry, I don't understand.
The question's for Brittany, so it's okay, Dr. Shanker. Brittany from the other center. We'll be right back.
That's why I didn't understand. I haven't done that.
Yeah, I think there's kind of like two folds to the Me Too movement. One would be women felt empowered, right? So we can now come out and say that we're survivors of sexual violence. Me too, you know. But the other thing to think about is how triggering it also is for individuals to hear about everyone's experiences with regards to sexual violence. So although, you know, we want people to feel empowered to come forward and to get the support that they need, I think that there's then some trauma that's created within each you know, because it's so public, it becomes quite traumatic for individuals who have either experienced something similar or just knowing that there's such a risk. Every day women are faced with the risk of being sexually assaulted. And that just came more to light with the Me Too movement, and similarly right now with Hockey Canada.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're now going to move back online to Jenna Suds. Jenna, you've got the floor for 5 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being here today, and of course for the incredible work that they do every day in our communities. I just want to confirm, I can't see on the screen that Debbie and Jamie are still in the room.
They're in the room, yes.
Okay, perfect. I was hoping I'd catch them before they left. Okay, so I'm going to direct my questions to either of them or both of them. In your opening statement, you mentioned the mental health impacts on TUSL LGBTQI plus individuals, girls and women. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate and share with us what some of the impacts are and what difference there is in providing a supportive and accepting environment.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So what the differences are for providing a supportive environment? Just wanted to clarify the question, if that's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So from what we've seen, and of course I can provide some additional information after this, is of course the gendered component of it. What girls are experiencing, of course, is compounded by both that intersection of misogyny or transmisogyny and then the bullying that's directed based off their gender or sexual orientation. And to this day, majority of the supports for LGBTQ people tend to be centered on cisgender male experiences, which means that that additional nuance of being affirming is lost still, and it causes those additional stresses. And so that's what we're seeing, but there is some more information that I'd gladly share after this.
Incredible. Yes, thank you. That would be very helpful, I think, for the committee. Another area I wanted to ask some questions, and again, either to yourself, Jamie, or Debbie. Recently, in some of the work that I've been doing as parliamentary secretary, I've had the opportunity to visit both Pride Fredericton and Yukon Pride. And in those conversations, I heard about how important gender affirming care is for the mental health of trans and non-binary youth. And something as simple but as important as gender affirming care and gender affirming gear, and how that can contribute to gender euphoria as an individual. So I'm wondering what other challenges you can share or point to that trans and non-binary young people face that impact their mental health, and what we can do better to support them.
Question. I think talking about gender affirming care and gender affirming gear is really interesting and really important. I think one of the challenges is over the last few years, we've seen a real rise in misinformation and disinformation about what gender affirming care is and means, especially as it relates to gender affirming care for people who are under 18. And there's this idea that youth are maybe coming out as trans and immediately accessing gender affirming care that's kind of irreversible, which is not true. First of all, the reality is that the waiting lists for gender affirming care in this country are very long and are getting longer. And that goes for gender affirming care at children's hospitals, so youth clinics, as well as for adults. And I think there's a lack of understanding that sometimes gender affirming care is as much as having support in changing the gender marker on your passport or on your driver's license, or having support in a legal name change. It's not healthcare per se, but it's still something that impacts your mental health, is not having to see a name or a gender marker that could be difficult. And I think going back to what I was talking about before with regard to mental health care, having access to gender providers who understand what it means to be gender affirming. And so youth aren't coming out and then either having to do research online or having to advocate for themselves to providers who maybe have an outdated understanding of what it means to be trans.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. Thank you for that. That's very, very helpful.
You have 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds.
Oh. Okay, thank you. Like I said, I appreciate the insights and everyone being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're now moving to 2.5 minutes to Adrienne LaRoche. Adrienne, you have the floor.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Véronique, I'd like to speak with you again because we finished on the topic of the increase in cases of mental health that were observed during the pandemic, and we have numbers that show that hospitalizations for mental health troubles have gone up by 50% during the pandemic. And we know that during the pandemic, young people have been on social media a lot more. Do you think that the hypersexualization of girls online could have an effect on their mental health?
Tout à fait.
Yes, definitely. Right now, we actually have an example of a young woman who was extremely negatively affected by social media. So right now, we do need a lot more awareness on social media. But in a way that's more accessible to young people, not just an ad. something that would really be, that could be done by companies or people who are in closer relationship with young people.
Le gouvernement fédéral.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you want the federal government to legislate to regulate this area.
Tout à fait.
Yes, exactly. It's necessary. We have strong proof every day of how this harms young women and girls. And again, this is because of social media.
Donc oui à une loi.
So yes to a law on hate content online. Now let's go back to the topic of funding. We talked a lot about this during my first round. With the increase of prices, with inflation, the risk of recession, would it potentially be a bad reason for the government to not decide to invest in mental health? Is it not the time to really start getting into this question of mental health transfers? I think that we should be moving forward and quickly. So not take the economic crisis to justify not investing in mental health. More so, we need to maintain this investment despite the economy.
Line for 2.5 minutes with Leah Gazan. Leah?
Thank you so much, Chair. And I have another, because they're leaving again, but for Debbie.
Sorry, Debbie's gone. Debbie and Jamie are out of the room. So they're gone.
Shoot.
Sorry.
Okay. I missed them. Okay, that's okay. I'll move on to the testimony from the Katora Sexual Assault Center. So one of the themes that this committee has been hearing about over the past few meetings has been the impact of sexual violence and gender-based violence and the lasting impact of trauma it has on women, girls who are survivors of this violence. And one of the previous witnesses at this committee has said that we will not be able to improve the mental health of young women and girls if we don't deal with the sexual violence. Can you share your perspective on this?
Do you want me to? Yeah, thank you for the question. I think sort of similar to what Debbie and Jamie had stated, we need to educate people on the effects of misogyny and the patriarchy, and making sure that that those things are kind of at the forefront, because when we look at every single person is affected by sexual violence. So if we're living with the fear of sexual violence, or if we're living with the trauma as a survivor of sexual violence, we really need to get to the core and the root of the problem, which is the violence itself being perpetrated.
So just following up on this question, like we know we need education, but going back, we also know that women are diverse gendered people who've experienced violence, and there's been lots of research on it, have lasting post-traumatic stress disorder that impacts their daily lives. Do you think that there is enough support for women or diverse gendered individuals who have gotten out of violence to recover from the post-traumatic stress that it often causes?
Absolutely not. There's just, if we look at just the sexual assault centers in Ontario, many of our centers haven't seen an increase in funding since the 90s. So with the Me Too movement, for example, we saw rates of people requesting our services heighten, but we haven't been able to figure out a way to manage our wait lists without increased funding. And we were a core service that was asked not to have a wait list. But that's not a reality. So across Ontario, and I'm sure the country, that is a challenge.
Thank you so much. We're now going to start our third round. We're going to do 5 minutes, and we're going to start off with Anna Roberts for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And wow, I'm learning so much today. I have a couple of questions, either to Brittany. I'm going to start with Brittany or Jordana. How many people do you serve?
So right now, if we look at the way we're funded, out of our core funding, that only includes 4 staff. I can only pay 4 staff under the core model. However, with a bunch of grants we chase, we are always asking for money. We do all these things. We have more than that. Right now, we have 3 full-time counselors. One of them is funded as core funding. 3 counselors who serve about 30 clients per, I guess, each round, who get about 12 to 14 rounds of service or counseling sessions. And then we have 2 part-time counselors who serve our Trent University, so the university that is in Peterborough, as well as Fleming College. So yeah, in a year we see probably close to 200 people.
And you do this on a $300,000 budget?
Yes.
We need to learn how you do that, because that's really incredible. So congratulations to both of you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I want to also ask Dr. Shaker. Is he still there? Is he gone? He's there. Oh, he's there. Good. We mentioned, I know you spoke to Michelle, and we mentioned about calming. And I found that very interesting because I did some research on PTSD with veterans and how service dogs / therapy dogs really help with PTSD. Do you have any studies on how service or therapy dogs, whatever you want to refer to them as, help with the same situation with young women and victims of sexual assault?
Well, you're exactly right. I have my older son is on the spectrum, and the very first thing we did was get him a service dog. And we now know that what the dog does is it triggers oxytocin, and oxytocin shuts down the stress response. The problem with PTSD is that the victim has what's called a kindled or heightened stress reactivity. So all kinds of things send them into hyperarousal. So it's not just not a simple fix. Let's go get a lab. Although as the owner of a lab, I can attest to their incredible benefits for calming an autistic kid. But there are all kinds of ways, and so it's really a case that for these women and kids, we want to give them as many different ways of triggering the oxytocin as we possibly can. But it's a great question.
So one of the things I also learned that with the service dogs, it helped reduce the medication that they required for PTSD, and it also helped them because, as we know, that they are costly to train. But the advantage at the end of it is the money that we're saving, both on healthcare, on prescriptions, and the benefit to the individual of not, having to absorb all these medications when a service dog or therapy dog. So one example that was given to me is we had a veteran that was on suicide watch, and he would have horrible, horrible nightmares of what happened. And the dogs were able to wake him up and calm him down. Do you think that would be beneficial?
You've done your homework, Anna.
Sorry.
So what the medication does is it suppresses the physical symptoms of an anxiety attack.
Right.
So it slows the heart, it slows galvanic responses. It does nothing to stop the mental side. It does nothing to stop the stress itself. The dog does.
Yeah.
And here, what we find is the wonderful therapists that you've heard that have been talked about today. What they're doing is they are triggering that calming system. And let me just generalize. We are seeing a generation now, a generation of teens and young adults, both sexes, who do not know what calmness is.
10 seconds. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
We need more dogs then.
Yes, and to my dog Benson, hello. He's probably out there watching right now, so he keeps me calm. So we're now going to pass it over to Sonia. Sonia, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, all the witnesses, for joining us and giving us the valuable testimony. My first question is to Ms. McKinnon. You said that the education, we need more education, and then also you talked about PTSD. And then what is the effective way to the preventive, the sexual violence? Can you elaborate on that?
Sorry, I thought you said McLaren. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh,
that's
Macmillan.
Yeah, so a big focus that we do at the center is on prevention education. So again, we sort of have two parts to our services. It's providing counseling services and case management to survivors, as well as prevention education. And really, we do things like bystander intervention, and we talk about what consent actually means. And we're really getting into the school systems and things like that to be able to provide that service.
Do you think the online violence or the bullying is also the risk factor? How you are preventing from that?
Yeah, it's certainly a risk factor. I mean, we see many clients who come to us because of sexual assault that was perpetrated on them through social media or through texting photos and things like that. So that it's certainly a huge concern. And as technology continues to, we get more techie as a community, it continues to be a concern.
So any recommendation, Dr. Stewart or anybody, any other witnesses can put insight in that, can elaborate on that, give us recommendation, how we can prevent that and protect our young girls?
So one of the things that happens, one of the questions we have to be asking is, why are these young males or older males doing it? And one of the problems that we see is, again, there is a system very deep inside the brain. It's called a seeking system. And when it becomes aggressive, it's called predatory aggression. And it can be triggered by what Brittany was just saying. When that is triggered, it shuts down self-awareness. It shuts down thinking. So what happens is all of these things that we've taught them, all of the lessons about the harm is out the window. They don't process it in the moment. So what we have to do is we have to figure out, and we actually know how to do this. Michelle was hinting at this at the start. They have to learn to recognize in themselves when they are shutting down, why they are shutting down, so that we bring their empathy back online, because the empathy shuts down completely. They do not see their victim as a human being. They see them as prey. This is the scariest part of it.
Dr. Shankar, you talked about the emotional stress, and you also turn off dopamine, but how we can balance those dopamine? It's a lack of motivation in youth. How we can elevate that motivation? Psychotherapy does help.
Okay, so yes, of course it does. But our problem is we're looking now. There is data coming out of the U.S. that's telling us at least 50% of the adolescents are having these problems, and it's probably considerably more. So we need to be thinking in terms of a universal model. Our problem is that they are living at a time when they are turning to things like social media or video games, and what these do is they give them a shot of dopamine, but they do nothing to turn off their stress. And so they get more and more stressed. And then guess what? Now we've got a serious issue on our hands, like suicide. So what we have to do is the education. There was somebody today made this wonderful point. I think it was Jamie. These parents and providers we have to educate them. What are the signs when your kid is overstressed? What are the things that they're doing to deal with that stress? And don't, as a parent or as a provider, add to their stress, thinking all they need is to be pushed. If we push them, then their motivation will come back online. It is not a case of pushing. It is a case of reducing the stress so that they can get to calm. I don't know if that answers your question, because it's a really tough question.
That's so. Thank you very much. All the work you're doing on the ground. Thank you.
Fantastic. We're now going to pass it back over to Adrienne. 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to speak to you now, Brittany. So there are some members who have made it to the Heritage Committee to speak to the topic of sexual assault with Hockey Canada. And now they have resigned, which is understandable, showing that they did not seem to have much empathy for people, did not want to change the culture of their institution. It was glaring in their speeches. You talked about Hockey Canada, and what I'd like to know is, now that they've left, now that they've stepped down, how can we show that desire to want to change the culture of this organization with toxic masculinity for all sports in Canada, not just Hockey Canada? What do we do first?
Great question. Thank you. I think the biggest piece is that prevention education at a really young age. So right now, for example, us at the center are getting to minor hockey associations to start that training right at the age of 6. And we're also working with coaches and parents to talk about those issues around toxic masculinity and the dangers of it. So we're doing a lot of work that way, and unfortunately there aren't the funds for that. We're just responding to the crisis and knowing that we can prevent a bunch of future sexual assaults from happening. And we do work closely with our OHL team. So I just want to highlight that. And the OHL, Ontario Hockey League, has taken many steps ahead of these allegations. So I think that's also important to note. But it's getting to the kids, the coaches, the parents at a really young age, because we put hockey players and other athletes on a pedestal, and we need to make sure that they're not just a great player, but they're also great off the ice.
Oui, puis on a vraiment le message.
Yes, and the message that's being sent is zero tolerance and transparency with these types of situations. When we talk about education, we need to be able to, say when these things are happening and that there is zero tolerance. We don't want to see this anymore. There are studies that are out there. We know how to create change in terms of culture. There are studies at a university level that talk about this too. Have you taken an interest in this? Have you looked at this type of research or researchers who look at culture change?
Yeah, we definitely, the prevention education team at our center and across most of the sexual assault centers are always, looking at current research and trying to implement those changes and be a part of some of those implementations. So we're consistently looking for new ideas and how can we make this better and how can we effectively change a culture. And it's not just hockey, it's a social, like a society culture that we're trying to shift as well.
Absolument. Et d'ailleurs,
absolutely. And also, Ms. Couture, you spoke about education at the end of your opening remarks. The importance of education and working ahead of time with men and women. Would you like to add to this? Yes, I can add that I deeply believe that in the education system in schools, everyone should have some sort of training that talks about mental health problems. I think there's a lack of education right now. Usually we put all mental health problems in the same box. And so I think there's a lot to learn.
Éducation, mais évidemment.
And you speak of education, but the federal government also speaks of lack of education in prisons, for example. So oftentimes people are working with individuals who have mental health problems. Yes, in our prisons, there is not a lot of training on this topic, and I think that there should be. There should be much more training that goes into the topic a lot on a much deeper level. I think it is very much necessary. Can I keep going?
The next person. So I'm going to pass it over to Leah Gazan. Leah, 2.5 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, 5 minutes. I'll give you 5.
But I was going to say I'm watching the clock here, but thank you so much, Chair. My question is for Dr. Shanker. I'm interested in your analysis. My first, when I was in university, my first course in psychology was taught by a neuropsychologist. And so I certainly appreciate your perspective. But here's my question for you. Like, I understand you in your testimony, you're talking about, helping young people or women and girls with stress by taking away stress factors, mentioning, for example, parents. But we know that all situations aren't the same. For example, if you look at social determinants of health, and if you look at it from more of a social psychology perspective, things like intersecting identities, the impacts of colonization on Indigenous people. We've heard much today about the impacts of bullying on the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. And I would say it goes beyond bullying to mass murders that we've actually witnessed, and the kind of stress just living in the world that places on communities, discrimination and ableist behaviors faced by disability communities. And these are just a couple of very brief examples that impact many young people, many young women and girls, and diverse gendered people. I'm wondering if your research looked into intersecting factors that impact on brain health and the health of brain health and functioning.
So Leah, you had a good professor. Yes, we do. And so we distinguish between 3 levels of the brain, and we call them blue brain, red brain, and gray brain. The red brain is the part below the surface, the part that has the limbic system, our emotions and things like that. All of those stresses that you're describing send these kids into, or whatever age, send them into red brain. When they are in red brain, strong negative emotions are running the show. So what we've heard today, these are wonderful programs that are designed to get them back into blue brain, to calm down the red brain so that they can begin to think. What we find, and this is really, really important, when someone is in red brain, they cannot choose. So we can give them all the information that we want. Yeah, go ahead, Leah.
So just going in there, because we hear about things like blood memory, for example. Like, we can talk about red brain. This is not a moment behavior. Like, for example, if a parent is calm, there's intergenerational layers of trauma.
Yep.
If we look at, for example, war veterans or women that have experienced violence, there's all sorts of triggers that set off stress factors that can't just be controlled. It goes beyond that. It's like in the lived memory and the lived memory of our brains, right? I would say spirit, but of our brains. So, when you're talking about mitigating that, is part of the response then, addressing those historical impacts or colonial impacts to assist with people that go into crisis?
Absolutely. And so we do an awful lot of work in the far north. And the basic thing that we've learned is that we cannot have this kind of individualistic focus. We can't look at the mind as this solitary thing. And so we're seeing entire communities that are in red brain. And in fact, if we look south of the border, we're seeing an entire country that's in red brain. And so what we have to do is we have to figure out how can we precipitate this healing process. It cannot happen unless we restore calmness, unless we restore homeostasis, so that we can now begin to jointly problem solve and address. Yeah, go
Sure.
ahead.
Thank you so much. And I would say that that would be when we're talking about restore calmness, that also includes addressing systemic racism. But I
agree.
I just wanted to move on to
10 seconds.
Oh shoot! My next questions will be for Melanie Mamiho.
Okay, guess what? Go right now. I'm going to give you your minute and a half right now, Leah. Go, and then we'll come back. You're just going to move.
Okay,
go for it.
So just moving. You spoke about land-based healing. We haven't heard about that. I was wondering if you could explain that, because we know one size fits all doesn't work. Can you expand on that?
Many of our communities have land-based learning opportunities for people to reconnect to who they were, their culture, their identity, and their ability to work through many issues. So there have been many programs that are examples and pilots of bringing our youth back to being a connected part of our community and our society.
So. Go ahead. Yeah, I was just saying, because feeding off the last question, it's like feeding our blood memory. It's resolving past traumas. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. As a young woman, as a young child, I was very fortunate to have my community around me, and I was able to connect with family and always had people to love and show support, caring, and kindness. Our young people now are missing that, especially our young women, and we need to bring them back to connect with the grandmothers and the grandfathers so that they can feel a connected part of society.
So it's almost like a circle. You start understanding why you are the way you are today by understanding your lived history, but also the lived history of the ones before you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're now going to go to our next round. Leah, I'm dropping you from this round now, but we're now going for your next round. We're going to start off. It's going to be 4 minutes for Michelle and for Mark, and then Adrian, 2.5 minutes. Sorry, you're out. And then Annie, you're getting 2.5. So we'll start with Michelle. Michelle, 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone. And we'll see what we can get in 4 minutes here. So, we are studying the mental health factors that are contributing sort of to the decline of women. And I know we have Brittany and Jordan here from Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, and I'm going to try and do something in 4 minutes. Let's see if we can do this. I'm going to try to connect you to what Dr. Shanker is doing to see how that will actually help where we are going. How is the frontline staff doing, Brittany, in managing the stress of caring for your clients?
That's a great question, and I think it's something so important. So if we think about the mental health of us and as the people that are serving the clients, that needs to be at the forefront. And unfortunately, with so much uncertainty, so if we think about uncertainty of budgets and things like that, people are always feeling at risk of losing their jobs. And we've been asked to continue to provide this service based on our passion to help people. But we look at it from like a bit of a systemic issue. People know that most people running these types of organizations are women. And that we'll just do it out of the kindness of our hearts, right? And so it is a systemic issue. We're drastically underpaid from my role all the way to every frontline person there. So we continue to do things with each other, and we're a great team, and I'm hopeful that a lot of people have that support, but the reality is it's really hard.
Is that you are trying to provide the care you need the care provided to you that you are ultimately trying to provide for your clients. So now I'm going to turn it to Dr. Shanker, and Brittany, you touched on one of the things we are fighting for so much right now, and that is that every parent, even people in general, are bombarded with a stress of affordability as we go into this new world of inflation and worrying about an affordability crisis. And that comes down to the not-for-profit sectors as well. When they don't know where their funding is coming from, that creates a stress. Dr. Shanker, how do we help these frontline workers? Because if we do not, right, if we do not help them, if we do not help our RCMP officers who are out getting killed, because they are doing the work of too many people, how are we going to help shift our society to get back to calm and to self-regulation?
Let me just say to the committee that what Michelle is saying needs to be processed very carefully because this is important. We're doing big projects right now with the armed forces, and we do projects with hospitals, pediatricians, nurses, etc. They are burned out. They are overstressed. Parents are overstressed because of the stresses that their clients or their patients or their frontline workers are feeling. So what we need to start thinking of, and this is Michelle's point, we need a universal approach. We need, as a healthy society, to figure out why is this happening? What can we do about it so that we maintain what has always been the heart of Canada? And that is, we are a society that cares about every one of our members.
I love when Dr. Shanker's able to tell people what my point is because he's bang on. No, it's true. And I think if we don't have that national framework in place, and he's saying universal, I mean, I'm going to speak from a federal government perspective. And, you know, Dr. Shanker, with that framework, $4.5 billion has been allocated, as I've said earlier. And if we don't send this mental health transfer into a universal or national framework, what's going to be the destiny of Canada? Answer in 5 seconds.
15 seconds to reply. 15 seconds.
I can do it in 8 seconds. Just look south of the border, Michelle.
Yeah. Well said.
Thanks so much. We're now going to pass it over to Mark Stray. 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. 4 minutes was going to be challenging to get all this in, but I just want to follow through with what Michelle was just mentioning about the national framework. And right now, the negotiations are happening with the provincial governments, and the federal government, and obviously as a priority, community-based services, mental health addiction services focused on youth. And 10 to 25, I mean, is one of the priorities. We heard, the Royal Health of Ottawa previous witnesses indicating the system is broken, the system is hard to access. And I wanted to ask Brittany McLennan, you mentioned earlier about a gap. You cannot service girls below 16 years old. Who are servicing them? What's happening? And how can you recommendations to us back to the bilateral agreements to address this?
Great question, and it's something that sits really heavy with all of us. We know that those girls we need to be serving. I will say that we do have a limited public safety grant through the federal government to focus a little bit more on the human trafficking aspect of sexual violence, and that piece we do have some flexibility to help service girls under the age of 16. However, again, it's not in our core funding model, and it's an issue. It's such an issue. I really worry about the girls, and I think at this point they're often told to pay for services or to get services that sort of what the other team that left were saying, that aren't the specialists in sexual violence. We're not the entry-level counselors, but we only pay entry-level wages. So we need to make sure that those young girls are getting service that's trauma-informed, but also specific to sexual violence training.
Thank you for that. And you also mentioned earlier about clinical therapy versus home strategies. Can you expand a bit some of the recommendations along those lines? The hospital clinical aspect versus kind of the organizational and home strategies. You alluded to that earlier.
Yeah, so we work really closely with a lot of our community partners, and so if people need counseling, they come to us or we refer out, and then we do a lot kind of meeting people where they're at. So Jordana specifically does a lot of accompaniments with individuals who are navigating the legal system, as well as needing, to go to the hospital for STIs, things like that. So I think we're basically doing it all when it comes to sexual violence, but we're only, like, maybe my MCCS will be mad, but we can't follow the mandate or we'd be not able to sleep at night.
Thank you. And Melanie Omeiha, sorry. Melanie, you mentioned earlier about land, basic acknowledgement. traditional medicine, but can you expand a bit about Grandmother's Wisdom Circle and how does that could inform us some recommendations along those lines?
So in our community, we have, and I know that people have a tendency to call them elders, but really they love to be called grandmothers, and they're the grandmothers that collectively work together. And when they come together in circle, they bring the young people with them and they pass on the traditional knowledge and language of who we are. And it's an important part of reconnecting people who in some terms have been called latchkey children, who have been disconnected due to urban issues or due to the fact that we don't have the same kind of communities that we used to have. And we try to bring them back together, and the grandmothers work with them and counsel them and advise them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're now going to pass it over to Adrienne for 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank all our witnesses again for being here today. Firstly, very quickly, Véronique, I spoke about the importance of training and potentially in the prison system, training for mental health. Could you very quickly add something to that? Yes, so I'd like to talk about what we have noticed. So in the prison system, there's no direct mental health services. And usually mental health problems are not properly treated. And so people become more and more unwell. They need a lot of counseling services with our workers. And what I would say is that the time that they spend in our association becomes even longer. It takes them longer to find their independence, to be able to go find their own place to live. And usually they spend 3 to 6 months. Most people do, but people who are in prison can spend up to 24 months in our system.
Merci beaucoup pour ton témoignage.
Thank you very much for being here today. Very quickly, Melanie, you spoke of recommendations for women and girls, Indigenous women and girls. Has the application of these recommendations been pushed back? And how has this affected the mental health of young women and girls who are in Indigenous communities?
Yes, it has been pushed back. The recommendations have been made for a very long time now. We've been 3 years since the reports for the inquiry in Weaving Miskatoha have been out. Longer for the TRC, and a lot of the commitments that were made have not been acted on, and it has significantly impacted young women and girls. When 1/3 of our young women will tell you that they have suicide thoughts, it's a serious traumatic issue in our communities, and we need to work to make sure that we can have healthy young women moving into the future who don't feel that they're not important or have extreme anxiety and depression issues.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to turn it over to Annie for the last round of questions. Go ahead, Annie, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask this question. When I interview people in my staff, I always tell them that you've got a 1-minute elevator pitch to convince me why I should be either hiring you or doing this. So here's the 1-minute elevator pitch to the Government of Canada. So in what ways could the Government of Canada improve the effectiveness and availability and the accessibility of mental health services for young women in Canada, and why?
And if you want to direct that through who you want to answer first, you've got 1.5 minutes.
I would start with Dr. Shanker, and then if there's some time, any one of the other witnesses that would like to chime in. Thank you.
I want the government.
Dr. Shanker, okay, go ahead, start again.
Okay, I want the government to teach parents and educators what self-regulation is. I want them to teach it so that they do it for themselves, so that they recognize the need for their kids, whatever their age, to learn how to self-regulate in healthy ways.
I think, speaking on what we do specifically, it would be to invest some more dollars towards sexual assault supports, knowing that statistically the rates of sexual violence are significant.
Well, for me, it would be to simplify the access to funding so that we're able to access it more quickly. And then we can work to meet the needs of our clientele.
Yes, Melanie?
For me, it's about us trying to make sure the resources we need get to the communities, program service providers that are providing mental health services to help our young people.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of the committee, I would really like to thank everybody coming and bringing your testimony today. It's been very strong and very, very helpful. As you're leaving, we are going to have about 6 to 10 minutes of committee business. So we're not going in camera. We're just going to do it live. I would like to welcome the guests. If you would like to leave, you're more than happy to leave right now if you wish. But I'm just going to go through some of our business right now. So just if everybody can turn to their business for the day. I'm just going to start by an Elections Canada document. As you were all informed by the clerk, Senator Donna Dasko has inquired about possibility to access Elections Canada written response following their appearance in June of 2018. And I'm just wondering if it's of the will of the committee for us to share that response to the senator. Just looking for yays or nays. All those in favor? Seeing no reasons. So to the clerk, we favorably will send that off to the senator. Is everything okay? Go ahead, Sonia.
Madam Chair, the response came in 2018.
Yeah.
And then if all party members are willing to, then we can share.
Fantastic. And it looks like we're all in favor. There should be no issues there. Wonderful. So we will send that off. On the next piece, a delegation from Armenian parliamentarians. A delegation from Armenia has asked to meet with the committee next week. Now, we initially looked at Thursday, October 17th, and they had asked for us to do it from 11:15 to 12:15. Unfortunately, that will not work because there is not the resources available to us. So the clerk has been working on this, but it's really up to the committee if we want to arrange an informal meeting. I'm going to ask the clerk if you want to take the mic. There's I'll be honest, I really get nervous about canceling our meetings when it comes to mental health and wellness because we're doing such incredible work. So I'm going to turn it over to you. So what are our options? We can do informal and have some food. What are you recommending?
Usually those kinds of meetings are considered informal meetings. The committee can decide to organize a lunch. I can go back with the organization to see if the date and time that the committee would like to meet them works with them. But it will always depend on the resources. So I can make a request for the time that you decide upon. And then if the resources are not available, then that will be up to the whips to decide.
Perfect. So I guess the first question I have for you, are you interested in an informal meeting with the parliamentarians from Armenia? So overall, we look like we're good. Okay.
Madam Chair, even if it's an informal meeting with a change of time, would it be possible to try to get the resources for this? Yes, I actually already asked for resources for the suggested time, but that was refused. If the committee decides on another time, then I can do the same request. And again, I'd have to get approval for these resources again.
Fantastic. So we are good for having an informal meeting. Is it the will of the committee that the clerk be authorized to make the necessary hospitality arrangements for an informal meeting with the Armenian parliamentary delegation? So we have to try to, first, resources are very important. And I know that both for Adrian and Dominique specifically, I know that's very, very important to make sure that we all can be part of this. But is it the will of the committee, if that everything's a go, that we go ahead and authorize the clerk to be able to do the arrangements? Do I see support of that? I'm just looking at all the faces. Fantastic. We got Adrienne putting both hands up. Awesome.
Us to figure out the time and date.
Yes. Because I like to leave all the work to the clerk, that's my job, I will ask the clerk to find the date and time and get back to us with those opportunities, okay? There you go. You asked who had to do the work. I'm throwing it to you. You said you and I. Pooh, I've missed that part. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead then with your authorization. I will work with the clerk and we will find that date and time and try to find something that works for at least the greatest majority of us. Finally, we will be meeting again next Monday, October 24th, to resume the study of mental health of young women and girls. And do I see adjournment for today's meeting? Fantastic. Today's meeting is adjourned. There you go.
Point of order, sorry. I just have a question. We were given a motion. What is going to happen with that? Sorry.
Not a problem. Although we're formally closed, that motion is just sitting there. It's been tabled and it's just sitting there amongst all of our other motions. So when we come to discussing what we want to do for our next studies, it will be up to the membership of the committee on how we want to move forward.
I see.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. Thanks, everybody.
Anytime, Leah. Bye.